Do that.
We're pretty close here.
We've got a minute to go.
Yeah, well, I got 9:59 and a half.
Let's get going.
And Councillor Peavoy may be a little late.
Okay.
May?
Well, he's informed us that he's been held up, so
Okay, well,
we'll...
let's be positive. He
With
will.
a gunner knife.
Before we start, let me offer a prayer, and we'll get started. Okay. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful as we begin this new year together as a council. We're grateful for the community that we live in and that we have the opportunity to help guide, and we pray that Thou would bless us with wisdom and insights into all the things that we discussed this evening, and throughout this coming year, that we'll be able to be wise as we help to guide this wonderful community. And we're grateful for all who serve in the community, for all the administration and all of the town workers, as well as all of the citizens that we have the opportunity to represent. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I'll call our council committee to the whole meeting to order. I'd like to welcome our TV, Corey, being here. Appreciate that. Bart, appreciate you coming. Welcome. Trying to remember your official title now, Director of
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, okay. And we appreciate that. Appreciate Jill being here. And Jeff, appreciate your all that you do. You're a key man, and all the council. Appreciate all of you. So we'd like to start right with our agenda. I have some changes I would like to propose, no additions, but I'll mention what I would like to change first. I'd like to move 7F on fluoride right down after 5, adoption of the minutes, because I've asked Bart to be here to be able to give us comment, and I don't want to keep him any later, so if we can move that. And also, if we can, when we come to 7C, ACP grant, it's directly related to the correspondence item of 9C, the first correspondence, so I'd like to include that correspondence item 9C with 7C when we do that. Those are the only changes I have on the agenda. Is there any other people have anything? Rob?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Okay, we have motion to adopt the agenda. All in favor? Okay, all right. We will, next thing, we have no delegations, so let's look at the minutes. We had a chance to read the minutes. We have a motion.
I'll put a motion forward to adopt the minutes of the CCW of November 3rd, 2015.
Okay, thank you. Mayor made the motion to adopt the minutes. All in favor? Okay, we're good for that. So let's move on to 7F now. Fluoride. I asked that this be put on. I thought about this over the time. I had people talk to me. My two concerns, I guess, one is that the plebiscite gave us opinion, but not necessarily informed opinion, and I think council really has an obligation to do our own research. We shouldn't abdicate that responsibility. And then the other concern I had was that this is an issue that doesn't necessarily have to be one way or the other, and I felt like there's probably could be a compromise that would help everyone, or maybe no one. I don't know. Sometimes you try to compromise, nobody likes it. But anyway, I've made some suggestions. If you had a chance to read my request there, I've put some options in there. I'll just comment on some of them because I had to put this together.
Before you move
Yeah,
on,
go ahead.
mind if I just make a comment?
Yeah, mhm.
Bill, I was challenged that we didn't have any informed opinion. We had.
Well, some. No, the council.
Let me speak. This is no indication of how I voted or anything. Personally, you know, I had my strong feelings, I was opposed to the fluoride being in there. So that's out on the table right now. But we certainly had information. We had a gallery full of people here, and we had experts on both sides of the question that gave information that helped. If the people who were so concerned had come or watched, they would have seen that there was both sides that were well represented. So to say that we had no information, that to me is not correct. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
We had plenty of information.
we, as a council, but I'm talking about the community as a whole.
They had opportunity to come.
There's always opportunity.
We have an open house, we have a vehicle for them to come and
Yeah.
watch, so for them to say that they weren't informed, that's not the case at all. They have every opportunity to come.
Yeah.
That's their responsibility, to come to these meetings. And if they sit back home and say they weren't informed, that's their problem.
Yeah,
The
no.
council give them plenty of opportunity to come.
No, I'm just
Okay.
making a statement of fact that people tend to vote, you know.
Well, that's fine, but I'm just saying that.
Councillor Creed, my concern is this. We started this program back in March, you know, with letters from different citizens.
Mhm.
Then we worked through that process, and May was chickens. April 15th, a letter from the clinic supporting fluoridation. Then we had the questions, and we turned to very simple questions. And the simplest question there was for fluoride: are you in favor of having fluoride in town of Cardston drinking water? Yes, 732 votes. No, 703. For a total of 1,435 votes, which is 60% turnout of our citizenship. That, to me, represents that everybody was informed. My concern is, if we have a public plebiscite, and then 3 or 4 months later, come back and start back on the same programs, yes, we can start it all over again, but that's not our jobs. We've listened to the public. We listened to the public, and the public replied and told us what they wanted and what they expected. And it's no different than the government we're living under.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Councillor Barfuss had a comment.
Okay, can I just respond first, Councillor Bengry, because that does bring me to my second opinion. I was just the second was because it was, you know, you've indicated the results of the plebiscite. That was basically a virtual split. I mean, we could say, yeah, there was about 27 more people for, but you know, the feeling is that, you know, where you've got half the community one way and half the community the other way, it's not something that we should say that it's one thing or the other. And that's, I guess I did say that.
But democracy rules.
I think there's an area.
That was democratic,
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
and it was fully transparent. And like Councillor Barnes said, everybody had an opportunity to voice their opinions, to listen to what was going on, and then voice their opinions on a ballot.
Yeah.
And this is what we put to the public. It cost us $11,000 to do this. Now, Councillor Creed, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask this question. Are you in favor of bringing chickens back onto the table, because that was part of the plebiscite?
Yeah, I'm not going to go there, Councillor, because there was a totally different response on that question. So I'd like to just stick with what we've got here. You read my backgrounder.
Councillor.
Yeah, and that's where I'm trying to get to. Councillor Barfuss.
I'm patient, I can wait. I looked at this a couple of different ways when I saw this here. And the idea, and I understand the idea that maybe not everybody in town spent the time to come to the open houses and get educated and informed about that. But those that didn't, the impression that I was given in talking with people was that they were siding with their dentists and their doctors. And so they were relying upon other experts that they trusted, so they may not necessarily have done all the research themselves, but they felt that they were informed enough because they were trusting their experts in that. And so I would reject the idea that the electorate wasn't informed about it, and didn't know about it, and I tend to kind of follow along the lines of Councillor Barnes and Councillor Bengry, in that I feel like we've spent an awful lot of time on this over the last year, and I'm not thrilled about spending more time on it.
Okay. Mayor?
I personally would support Councillor Barfuss and all the other voices I heard. I really believe that we did due diligence in putting it to a plebiscite. A plebiscite is exactly what it is. People need to get informed, need to do the work. Unfortunately, you're correct, some would not have done the proper homework. But at the end of the day, it's the same story as a federal or provincial election. You get what you get, and the voters are always right. In that case, they gave us a 20-some-odd voice majority, but it's a majority regardless. That it be one vote to be a majority. And so that it leaves some people with a feeling that their voice is not heard. I hear you. That's no doubt problematic for them. But in a democratic system, there is, as you say, maybe a way to try to understand if that chemical is a safe chemical. But I think Bart would address that issue. I cannot see anyone in government allowing their citizen to be sick with a substance that is not safe. But having said that, it's possible it is not. But I doubt it, because we would see a lot more people sick in this town if that chemical is supposed to have toxicity to the point it affects the neurons and whatever. I think we would see a lot more trouble with our youth. At this point, I don't see it, but I know that we have sought the advice of our doctors, of our dentists, and we also have sought the opinion of some people who are from the university who have an interest in that. And we also had the local medical giving us a result of a comparative between the Cardston and the Raymond children, because Raymond has no fluoride.
I think it's Fort McLeod.
Fort McLeod. And really, it appears that we were somewhat better off with the dental health of our children than over there. So taking all that in consideration, we cannot say we did not have information. I think we had information. That we choose to accept that it is well-funded or not, that's a matter of personal preference, and I don't know how you change that.
Yeah, Councillor?
There is a simple solution if you don't want fluoride.
Yeah, well, no, that's
Right there.
That's there, and that's why I thought some other things that, you know, there would be simple solutions either way. And the other concern I don't think anyone has addressed yet, and I'll just quickly, is it possible, because there was, you know, a split, that we don't have to say it's either yes or no? Could we, you know, is it possible to look at the situation and say, could we somehow mitigate, you know, what is our level, Bart, that we have right now? What is our license?
On an average, our fluoride content in the water is 0.8 milligrams per liter.
Okay.
And we've reduced that
That's on an average where it is.
significantly.
We have to maintain,
Is it parts per million or milligrams per?
Same
It's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
we have to maintain 0.6 to 1 is what we have to maintain
It's
in our approval.
So
If we go below 0.6, we're in contravention. If we go above 1, we're in contravention. So we like to keep that in between 0.6 and 1
okay.
to be on the safe side, so we're not low or we're not high. Fluoride fluctuates so easily that it's hard to maintain a .60. It'd be very difficult.
Okay.
And we'd be below our approval
Yeah.
amount.
Okay, so Bob, help me understand. If I remember last council, it was actually you, Councillor Creed, who had brought that up and to see if we could reduce the level. We were at 1.0 last council and we dropped it to 0.8 part per million, which is the rate at which we are operating right now. Now, does that 0.8 part per million includes the natural
Yes.
0.2?
Yes.
So that means that really what we're adding as chemical is 0.6 part per
About
million
0.6 to
more.
0.7.
Okay, so we're already quite lower than in many other towns who keep it at 1.0.
So the recommendation in Canada is what, 0.1, or I mean 1?
That was in past years, it was 0.1. And council years ago mitigated that, we reduce it to 0.8.
Yeah, that was under our council.
And then, so we had it in our approval at 0.8. And then Alberta Environment came out in 2006 that they would put the approval levels from 0.6 to 1. And it would just be within that boundary.
In that range.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are times, if I remember correctly, we had last year or year before an infraction cited to us because we were too low in the fluoride.
Yes.
In fact, for a week or so, we didn't have any
Yes.
because we were kind of upgrading the system.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, so, yeah, when I had to write this fairly quickly, and I did a little looking up afterwards, it was the United States, when I mentioned other jurisdictions, I wasn't sure, I had to, because I didn't want to put something without checking, anyway. I checked, it's the United States, basically, their health agency has reduced their fluoride optimum level. It used to be a range of between 0.7 and 1.2, and because they recognized that the prevalence of fluoride in so many other areas, that their recommendation now is just 0.7 as a maximum in the U.S. So that was another thought that I had.
What's their bottom end?
They just said 0.7 now. They didn't really put a range, but it used to be they would recommend between 0.7 and 1.2 parts per million, and they recently changed their recommendation to 0.7 as the recommended level throughout the country, because they recognize that fluoride is so widely available and the prevalence of fluorosis. Anyway, they did lower their level to 0.7. So that was the other thing I was wondering if it would be something that we would be interested in doing. Yeah.
I remember, Chairman Creed, when we were doing the comparisons, and I remember Bart telling us back then during the debate and the period there, that we were well aware that the natural occurring fluoride was 0.2.
yeah.
It ranges from 0.1, 0.2
Yeah,
at times.
yeah. And so, I mean, you commented in here that most people, if the information was given with the book on the other way, well, the information was there. That's all I'm saying.
I agree.
And once again, I reiterate, I didn't want fluoride in the
Yeah,
water.
no, that's fine.
Okay, and I'm not trying, I'm just throwing this out there because just the fact that you said that we didn't have the information, that was just my only concern. We had lots of information.
No, I wasn't.
More than enough, I thought.
We didn't have
Okay.
information. I was just saying that, that any plebiscite,
Yeah.
you get a lot of opinions, and some of it's informed, some of it's not. So.
But just one comment, one of the concerns that I have is that our electorate, they place a lot of responsibility on us as a council, which we take gladly and we do it. But it would really be nice if more of our public would come to some of these meetings more often so that they could hear what's going on, because when issues are brought up, and it's like the electrical rates and the sewer rates and all the debate that we've been going on, the open houses, the public meetings that we're having, it just doesn't, people seem to rely on the fact that we're gonna give them the best deal. And we try, no doubt, we try to give them the best possible rates we can. But it'd be nice to have a little more public input at the open houses, because it takes a lot of work. The people that prepare that information work long and hard to come in and bring all the information, and then it's discouraging when one person shows up, or two, or only three out of a community of 3,500 people. It makes you wonder, you know, how much they're concerned about it. So I wish people would come out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, Mayor.
Chairman Creed, it seems to me that they're on the table, there's not much desire to carry on.
No, and that's...
And I think maybe we need to...
That's fine, I just wanted to put out that feeling. The other concern I did have, and I mentioned in there, is that in the chemical that we do use, and this, you know, when we were debating this, or, you know, before, and I had you know, one of the magazines that stated, you know, by you know, professional in the system, that there wasn't any. And so maybe, Bart, can you address that? Is there, do they give any parameters on the chemical that we use, as far as, is there any safety standards on the hydrofluorosilicic acid that goes in as far as purity?
Well, it is at 27% fluoride is what the content. It's derived from phosphoric acid,
Right.
the development of phosphoric acid, and it's an evaporation of that, then they liquefy it, and it's developed into hydrofluorosilicic acid.
Right.
Of course, it's measured at 1 pH, so it's pretty acidic.
Yeah.
So there's precautions there.
But are you aware of any standards of, you know, of other things like arsenic or lead or other heavy metals that is there a
They
limit?
list completely what's in there, and there's no indication that that is in the
They give you a
ingredients.
complete listing of the ingredients? I mean, of what is contained in that chemical?
I do not have a complete listing of it. I have the MSDS sheet, which doesn't give a listing of it. It just gives the information that it's derived from the evaporation of phosphoric acid.
Yeah, it's from the fertilizer industry.
Yeah, and that's where it's coming from. Now, you have a lot of chemicals in water, and I'm sure there's a lot of chemicals and minerals in that as well. You could, at a cost, find out what that is. And I'm sure we can research into that and find out what it is in there. It has been deemed non-hazardous to, as far as oceans and fisheries. Of course, if there's a heavy spill of a concentrated liquid of anything, even milk, then they have a concern. So hydrofluorosilicic acid would be a concern in the raw state to be spilled in a river. So there is some concern there. And that's why it's listed under MSDS and hazardous material.
But in the measured dose, they consider it's not, it's safe basically for
Yes.
the community. So, do you feel it would be worth having a sample tested, or is the quantity so small in our water system that it wouldn't make any difference?
I don't believe you'll find a lot of difference. I mean, we have a full listing of the content in our water, and that lists arsenic, that lists silicone, it lists a whole lot of minerals
Oh, just in the water
in
itself?
our water
sample
itself. And that's including the fluoride that's in there.
Okay,
And they're very minute amounts.
okay. All right.
And I don't believe you'll find a lot of alarming amounts of any harmful product that would cause some sickness
Okay.
in our water.
That's I just wanted to see if we couldn't alleviate the concerns.
Well,
That's the main.
if there's enough concerns, and if you'd like, we certainly can give an absolute analysis of fluorosilicic acid.
Okay.
And it might be available just with a phone call,
Okay, all right,
and I can research that out for you.
okay, I appreciate that. And so, I think we have a consensus from council, and that was my intent here, not to necessarily make waves, but to make sure that we had done our due diligence on this, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Bart, for being here.
You're welcome.
So,
Glad to be here.
with that, I'll...
Sometimes it's fun to ride the wave.
Okay, that's fine, thanks. All right. Thanks, Bart. Okay, I'd like to move on to 6A, on the council remuneration. And you have the town policy, you've also had some examples of policies from other communities. What I would like to do as we address this is that in the backgrounder, Jeff mentioned some specific questions, and also in Tyler's writings, he mentioned a few things. So I'd like to go through those items one at a time, and I'd start by either making an opening statement, or I understand the mayor brought some of those up, if you'd like to make the opening statement, or somebody, and then if we have a consensus, then we can move on to the next one. If there's a disagreement, then we can have a discussion on it, so that we can move through this. And Jeff said that this isn't something we have to totally resolve right now, but if we can at least answer these questions, we'll do that.
Well, the conversation I had with Jeff at one point or another was regarding the following. Sometime in the past, we had, for example, photo ops. And when we have photo ops, it's a matter of maybe 5-10 minutes. So what we need to consider is that part of a regular councillor's duty and part of his remuneration for the quarter as councillor, or should we feel that it's warranting a half-day per diem?
Okay.
So those are questions we need to answer. For example, if we have two issues during the day, each one amounting to less than 2 hours, do we consider that as one half day, or do we consider that as two separate events representing 2 half days?
Okay.
So those are concerns we need to look at, is what is it that we feel as councillor is deemed to be the extra that should not have the per diem attached, or have that per diem attached, and how we gauge that.
Okay.
So maybe those are conversations.
No, that was good, yeah, that wasn't a specific question, but it is
But
actually...
it adds to the conversation.
It is, and that's one that,
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up because the half-day is actually defined in our policy as 0 to 4 hours, and I had a little problem with that, 0 to 4 hours. I thought we should put a minimum.
Well, it could be 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, I thought we should
Which a
put-
photo op is.
Yeah, put a minimum on that.
I don't do some days, and I don't expect to be paid for not doing nothing.
So let's take that as question one then. For half-day remuneration, do we, whether it's one event or multiple events, if it's less than 4 hours that we spend in a day, do we just consider that half-day remuneration, or do we consider 2 events? I would say just
I mean,
consider
so
half a day, even if it's any other question, Councillor Bengry?
January 30th, of this month, we're going to have a planning session. And I think we need to independently look at this whole situation and move this council remuneration policy and discuss that at our planning session.
On the planning session?
Yes, and there's a space here, it says miscellaneous and wrap up from 4:30 to 5, because it's gonna take quite a bit of time tonight, and I think we can expedite that.
Well,
Because there's a lot more than just per diems and a half hour versus 5 minutes or 15 minutes and stuff like that. So I think we need to really take a serious look at this and all the differences and why we're right into the
Agreed.
yeah. And you know, the goods and the bads, and I don't.
I'd like to, I budgeted the time that I don't, more than half an hour on it tonight, and I think we can afford that, looking at the rest of the agenda, because there's a lot of, we'll go fairly quickly, but,
Just a comment, I understand Councillor Bengry's concerns. If we left all these things to that planning meeting, we won't get through them at the planning meeting either.
So-
So if we can take a few minutes on each one, and so be it.
Well, that's,
You know.
yeah, well, that's what I'd like to do. If we can do that, if we can take, say, a lot more than half an hour and answer as many of these questions, let's do that.
So let's talk about a couple of quick examples of what would constitute, the photo op or get called out on on an emergency basis or whatever, I mean, you guys had to cover the flood that time and call for, what do you call it? Pardon me?
Yeah.
Special meeting, yeah.
Yeah, and so is that a situation where it's part of this type of thing? It was a mandatory meeting. It had to be done. You had to
Right.
take time, right?
So long we had 3 councillors,
That's
that's
right.
all what was
Yeah,
required.
And,
Well, one of the very common ones I see that I know aren't being applied uniformly is, let's take, for an example, you're on a committee that has a Christmas party. Or you're on a committee that has a special guest speaker. Southborough does it all the time. So
Yeah.
Southborough has a special guest speaker that comes into town, and a couple of councillors want to go to that because they're interested in the subject matter. And that's great. Again, in this whole topic, I don't care one way or another, but sometimes some councillors would call that and charge a per diem because it was a committee meeting. But others said, it was optional. It wasn't actually the committee meeting. It was related to it, but not. Or you sit on a committee that has a Christmas party, and you go to the Christmas party for the committee. And so I see a lot of those. And where it tweaks in my mind is I see some are submitted and some councillors do not. So I see that means there's ambiguity in policy. That's what it leads me to believe.
Yeah, just so I could quickly address that too. For me, if I'm invited on one of my committees to go to a Christmas party, I don't feel that that's something that I'm going to put a per diem in, right? Where, like you say, if other councils are doing it, we should have a policy of whether, if one or two do it, should we all do it, or what, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just part of my committee assignment to go to that party and represent the town, because we are compensated on a yearly basis for attending some of those. I'd see where some of us have long meetings, like you're gonna have a meeting 3 times a year to go to Lethbridge, to the Chinook Arch, and that's a 4.5 to 5 hour turnaround every time. To me, that's a full day per diem, right, plus your mileage. But they pay your mileage. Fortunately, you don't have to worry about the town paying your mileage, just the per diem, because the Arch pays for that. And then some of you are gonna have, your Chief Mountain Waste, it may be a 3-4 hour meeting too. I don't know, but I know that I'm still gonna be going to some of those long meetings, and Councillor Peavoy is going over to Pitcher Creek to the South Grove, or the Southwest.
Southwest.
And that's a long turnaround, so those meetings, we should have a ruling for compensation on,
Well,
because,
if they're, I think that's fairly straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's over 4 hours, then it's a full day. per
yeah,
diem.
but our regular committee meetings, though, are part of our
Yeah,
compensation package already.
We don't submit a per diem for.
No, we don't, that's what I'm saying, but if you do go for a long one, then you should.
Oh, you're saying that South Grove, because it's a regular committee.
Yes.
Should maybe have an extra compensation for.
Exactly.
For
And we did discuss
that
that.
long, okay, all right, okay.
But
That's
what's a
right.
consensus? Maybe if we do it one item at a time, maybe it'll be giving administration a better sense of where we're going with those
Well,
items.
I feel if you have one of those meetings where you have to go to town, you're gonna put in your mileage, you're gonna have to put in per diem, whether it's gonna be a half day or a full day.
Okay, let's, Councillor Bengry.
I sort of disagree with that, Councillor Barnes,
Yeah,
because
yeah, good.
I go to Mormon Trail meetings in McGrath all the time. And those meetings run an hour and a half, 2 hours, but the big meeting that I go to every month is Chinook Foundation. They start at 6:30 in the evening. They're sometimes in McGrath, sometimes here, and they don't let out till 9:30, 10 o'clock. But I only claim my mileage if I go to McGrath,
Yeah.
because that's a committee assignment. So we need to look at that very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely, we do.
Because it could cost the town a lot of money
Yeah.
that we've all already got worked into the remuneration package.
Yeah, and then I want to kind of rein everything in a bit, but just go ahead.
Jeff, maybe the question is for you. The amount that we get from the town for being on committees, how many hours works would you say it represents? Maybe that is a way to look at it. To be a little bit more transparent with the amount of time that we pass there. If it represents an amount of time that is equal more or less to how many hours we pass on committees, then there should be no extras. Because that would represent a fair wage for a fair amount of work. So maybe that's what we need to look at. If we do that, and if administration can figure it out, then I think it gives us a better threshold to understand how each of our assignments at committee work according to the remuneration we get for those committees, notwithstanding the mileage,
Yeah,
but the hours of work.
Required
Yeah,
time. is what
yeah.
you're saying.
yeah.
Boy, that's a lot of
Yeah.
work for you.
So I-
No, that's not a lot of work.
I don't have an answer for you. I couldn't speak to your current policy being based on a minimum amount of hours.
Yeah.
It doesn't reference it, and I don't know. We did include Didsbury's policy in here because theirs is based on, for the
Right.
mayor particularly, it's based on 40 hours a week.
Right.
And then if it's above that, there's just a single hourly rate.
Right.
So, but it doesn't actually mention councillors, which is interesting. But sorry, Mayor, I don't know.
No, but I think it would be an interesting thing to look at it, because Jill would probably know how much she is expanding.
Yeah, that's the thought, is what
for
you're
the-
saying, is that the different remuneration tied to the committee assignments that you're on, and, because some committees will require more time than others.
And I really think if, in average, within the limit, if all committees represent that upper lower threshold, then I think we would have a better sense, because right now, we don't really have a very good grip on it, especially because some meetings are very long and some are very short. So we don't really know, and some are inexistent.
And some committees like, I haven't been on a lot of Chinook, but, they maybe have some shorter meetings, some longer meetings, I suppose, I don't know.
So what we need to do is look at average. It's going to do a little bit of work, as you say, Councillor Bengry, but I think it's doable. And if we had a sense of that, then we would have a better sense. Is our remuneration fair? Is it not? If it is fair, then I would say we go to our committees, pay the mileage. Some meetings will be long, some will be short, and when we do the rotation, we hopefully try to kind of balance those out for people.
So a lot of our committees, just a minute, give me a minute, sorry. A lot of our committees have dossiers, that Marion kind of set up. Now, Jeff, what kind of a task would it be to, along with those dossiers, come up with an average amount of time that committee requires, and then attach that remuneration to the councillors that are assigned to those committees? How onerous of a Just a minute, let's,
I don't think, I think if the council was satisfied with the amount assigned to each committee, I don't see it as a particularly cumbersome exercise. And I was just keep putting myself a note here. I think I put average time and average mileage last year when we reviewed all the agencies,
Yeah,
boards
you
and
did.
committees. I did a big spreadsheet. I think I've gone through that quite a bit at this point. So I just put a note that I'll resurrect that and look.
just,
But we can definitely look at that between now and the next time we talk about this, for sure.
okay.
See what that looks like, and I'd have to work with Jill to see how we manage that each quarter. Or I guess it would just be once a year at the organizational meeting,
Yeah.
how we manage that each year.
Right,
But I don't see it as particularly cumbersome.
okay, well, we could look at this, Councillor Edmonds and then Councillor Barfuss, and then we'll get back to you.
One of the committees I serve on, Community Futures, doesn't really fit into that category.
Mhm.
Because once a year, we have a planning meeting, and we meet for up to 12 hours the first day,
Mhm.
and then 6 hours the next day.
Mhm.
Our meetings vary anywhere from 2 to 4 hours,
Mhm.
and every fourth one is in Cardston, but all the rest are out of town.
Mhm.
So
But you'd
travel time,
you'd still have an average on that, wouldn't you?
well,
I mean, yeah, it would average out over the year to a certain number of hours, I would expect.
well, it'd be fairly high, because, you know, if you're looking at 6 hours for every
Yeah.
meeting, we meet at least once a month, and then, well, for 11 months, and then the 12th month,
Mhm.
we have a 15 or 16-hour meeting total.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's what it is, that's what it is.
But that one will never get rotated around.
Well, I don't know, maybe the count. We'll find out.
Because you
I don't-
stay on that one for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is one that you probably tend to stay on.
Yeah.
Or maybe that is.
But, I mean,
That's kind of a mandatory meeting.
If it is, it is what it is. The mayor gets a higher compensation because she's expected to put in more time. If you're on a committee that puts in more time, I'm not gonna, complain because if you get a little higher paycheck than I do because you put in more time, that won't bother me.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Councillor Barfuss, did you have a comment there?
I was just thinking of the original question that you'd asked there regarding, the photo op or the 2 half-day meetings. I would say that something like that should be under one meeting, like one time period, if it only impacts that time period. But if I had a meeting that takes 20 minutes at 10 o'clock in the morning that I have to be here for, and I have another one that's at 2:30 in the afternoon, and it is effectively taken a full day for me to be there, even though each of them is only an hour or 2 hours long.
Mhm.
Because you have to adjust your work schedule for all that.
Yeah. Well, this might.
No, that's an interesting comment.
This might take us to, I was hoping to address these as per item, but number 6 on Tyler's comments, he says, will claim per diem be tied to a motion of council? That would settle a lot of these if
Where did you read that?
it's under Tyler's comments. It would be right after
6A.
the town policy, the town remuneration policy, before you get into the other towns' policies. Or Tyler's got some comments. He's got
The only comment I see is other items as included in the summary from Tyler.
let's see, he says,
Yeah, go to 6A, Councillor, you're still in the background.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
where
you are
I'm
in the
at.
back.
That's where I'm at, but I don't see any other,
I've got mine on paper, but as I recall, it was right after the town policy on your drive. But he's got the 6 items of
I got those.
what others include, and then he says some other things to address. Is that what you got?
There's what I got.
Second page there.
Oh, this is
Oh,
the
you're-
background.
You're in the background.
So go back to the.
Go to 6A?
Yeah, you go to your
Yeah.
item on 6A, and on the drive of the policy. It's under the town policy. Yeah.
One more page.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, Court, but I'm trying to hit things from the backgrounder as well as that on your drives that are in separate places.
Okay.
Because this is, under Tyler's, the last other items, other things to address, he just says, will per diem be tied to a motion of council? And this is, in some of these other
I got it now.
town policies, they, you have to have a motion to council before you can claim a per diem, and would that be something that we want to do?
I mean, every time you go to something, you're gonna have to have a council motion to?
Well, we usually don't, other than our regular committee meetings, we usually don't go to something like, we're going to talk about the RMF, the seminar and the Brownlee seminar. We usually do talk about it at the table anyway. We make a motion for a councillor or somebody to go to that, and if it wouldn't be a problem to say, they'll be reimbursed or they'll be paid for that. I don't think it would be
It's like when I went to FCM.
onerous, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because of the time factor, would be worthwhile to look at that policy and all the item and the recommendation or the suggestion of Tyler, would be worthwhile before we have that planning session, to each of us address that and make a point to send the information to administration for them to compile or a decision regarding those, what we deem our decision or preference, and then have that be brought forward to the planning session, where we would have a sense of what commonly we feel would be appropriate.
Well, I
Would
think
it be something that could be useful to speed up the process and be totally 100% every person of this council? We have one missing, and to have that compiled properly, to be able to see it and to see what the consensus is, and then can bring it back to a public meeting as to what is decided. Would that work?
That would be a good way to do it. That's kind of what I was hoping to do, is go through these one at a time here. Maybe what we should do is go through them fairly quickly right now and at least get them defined so that we understand what they are. For instance, if you have to go back to your background, because that's where I'm looking right now, the items that Jeff has put in the background are mandatory versus optional meeting attendance compensation. What do you mean by that? And then and just get a definition, and then I'll go through the rest of them so that we understand, and then we can put our responses on there. So when you say mandatory versus optional meeting attendance compensation, what is the question?
That's kind of what I meant earlier, that you have a committee that meets monthly, but then maybe has a social or has a speaker series or has something above and beyond that, where it's not the mandatory committee meeting, but you're interested in the subject matter, it's something you want to support, so you want to attend that.
Okay, yeah, well, here's one for the unique maybe to me, Communities in Bloom. I meet monthly basis, but then we do projects, we go down and we plant all of those planter boxes, and I'm also a volunteer to do that, but then the other volunteers, they don't get paid, so I consider that as a volunteer activity, but somebody might not. So
And another thing is, like, when it's sit in here and Tyler's recommendations about the ad hoc committees, see, Councillor Edmonds, he's on the library board, but he's also an ad hoc committee of the Chinook Arch. That's a long meeting. You're on your way by 4:30 or 4 o'clock, and then you're not home till after 10 o'clock on that one. So that's really an ad hoc committee.
But
it's three meetings per year.
right, you have 3
Which
meetings.
I always put in
If
for, but.
you don't mind me.
yeah, go ahead.
You have 3 meetings a year,
Mhm.
but then you only have 9 meetings the other time around, so you have 12 meetings a year.
Well, some of your committees are
Right.
3 meetings a year, period, but you don't have an ad hoc committee. So what I'm saying is that one, I think, is justifiable for
Okay,
per
so
diem.
what we need to do is
So we have to define that.
define, is a committee meeting, a regular committee meeting once a month, if it is meeting regularly?
But not every
Or is
committee
that
meets once a
3 times a
month.
year, or is that 4 times a year?
Yeah.
Or what is
Some of
the
them are 2,
expectation?
some of them are 3 times a
Yeah.
year, some of them
So-
are 6, some of them are 8, you know,
Yeah.
so they're all over the map.
Well, let's,
But we're still compensated
yeah.
on a
Well,
yearly basis for all of them.
This may come back to what we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, as I go through the schedule
Yeah.
and figure out
Yeah.
what we're attending. Okay, parade attendance,
I think the whole meeting can
Candy,
be
yeah.
spent just on this stuff.
So you're saying, is it, do we automatically get paid for the parade attendance, or do we have to submit a claim form? I've
Well,
never submitted
I
a
never
claim
saw
form.
Right, so 2 things on that one. One, this actually came up at AUMA. I was sitting next to a councillor from Didsbury, and we were just talking, and they said that they don't get compensated for parade attendance because they can choose to go or not. The town doesn't necessarily care if they attend 15 parades in a year, the town collectively. But if someone has a hometown or has a place they want to go and they want to do that, they do that as a volunteer. So it was those kinds of things where we added a parade this year, I think, that some people
Stand
want
off
to go to.
and
Yeah.
Sterling.
So
Yeah.
Sterling, for
Mhm.
example,
Yeah.
not normally in our roster of parades.
Mhm.
So do we, just to clarify, are those things that are going to be covered by per diem?
Okay, I guess maybe I'll take that one back to that end, is that we decide in a motion of council if we're
Yeah.
going to pay for those when we talk about the parades,
Mhm.
if we want to, if we should. Okay, and then next, volunteering for executive assignments on the boards.
So I'll use the mayor as an example because I know she's doing this. South Grow will have 3 or 4 different subcommittees. So she volunteers to sit and chair a subcommittee. Well, that automatically means another 4 meetings a year, or 6 meetings a year, or 12 meetings a year, potentially. So not as her core assignment, she's volunteered to sit on a subcommittee that will meet another 12 times in Lethbridge. Is it the intent of council that that is above and beyond the regular council committee responsibilities and is subject to per diem? I'm not saying whether it should or shouldn't be, but we need to clarify that.
Now, on a lot of those, it's, the organization will pay, or
Yeah,
or
not in
should
this
pay.
case,
They
yeah.
may not in this
Yeah.
case, but sometimes they do. So, yeah, or if we, I don't know, we haven't had anybody on the AUMA boards, but.
Right, so that's always a possibility.
We might have somebody that wants to serve on the AUMA board.
They pay though. They,
I know.
Yeah, they probably
AUMA,
do.
they
Yeah, I
pay?
think they do.
Yeah. So, okay, so
That's what I meant by
I was
that.
asked to go on one of the committees, I told them no.
Mhm. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Here is a difficulty. When you sit on an executive committee, as an executive, you sit on a committee as an executive, it is not a bad position for the town.
Oh,
because your voice is there.
Yeah.
So what we need to decide, is that worth something, or is that part of your regular committee? I don't know how I treat it. I think if I remember right, all what I claim is mileage, right, Jeff?
I think so, it sounds
I
right.
claim mileage and I don't claim for the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, different people would treat it differently. Councillor Barfuss?
Yeah, my feeling on that actually is that you should be claiming for that meeting.
That's
And
what I was thinking,
there
same
is a
thing.
value to council for you to be on that executive,
Yeah.
and an advantage for the town for you to be on that executive. And it can mean a significant amount of meeting times.
It's a lot more work.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that.
So actually, that conversation maybe is spurred another question in my mind. Do councillors have the right to waive their per diems, or does that cause issues with the council? If you have the right to receive a per diem, but you don't claim it, is that a problem, or
It's
if
confusing.
if we deserve a per diem, should we mandatorily take it? Yeah.
So you folks right now are all over the map on this,
Mhm.
right? So you all apply this differently. And what we did change last year, I believe, in the budget is we began to budget what that full amount could be if you all chose to claim for everything. so that we captured it in the event you did.
Mhm.
Historically, we kind of took an average. You know, we just said, well, we're about 40,000 a year, or something like that. Well, now I think the budget's around 70, something along that line, because we were trying to estimate what that could look like. So that has been something that I've heard many of you talk about, is should per diems be mandatory, and if you want to choose to donate them back to a good cause in the community, great, good on you. If you don't care either. That's fine too, it's your time. But should they be paid out to reflect the cost of having a council?
Well, it's a point.
Yeah.
I don't want to have around the table any councillors thinking, well, you know, he doesn't take per diem, so he's a dirty rat. Or they do, why are they taking that? I don't take it. You know, it causes a little bit of
That's
conflict,
what
and
I'm
we should have a policy in place, I feel, that everybody takes their per diems. And like you said, if you want to donate it to some cause, go right ahead. You know, because we don't need to have feelings. We haven't had any, not that I was aware of,
Yeah.
but the potential is always there. You know, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, that was my thoughts there, yeah.
I really think it brings up a good point. What we call volunteerism on that table is interpreted differently by every one of us regarding our personal circumstances or personal belief. So you're right, a policy that would kind of define
Yeah.
what it is that we can claim for without feeling guilty, because we shouldn't have to feel guilty for giving our time. It's maybe a wise move
Yeah.
for this council to approach it.
Because I know there's a lot of projects going on in town, different things that our different committees are involved in, and they're always looking for donations. And I'm sure if I was to ask for a show of hands, that each of us do donate because we feel that obligation. We're part of the committee, or we're part of the town, and it's a privilege to help those things, you know, and so there's nothing wrong with donating that money back if that's what you feel like doing, you know.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so
That might be something that we could consider as making sure that we understand that we do claim the per diems, and then if we want to donate it
yeah,
back,
I think that's a
we
good
can
way to
do
go.
that, so that way it doesn't look, the potential for causing feelings, that's good. Okay, just gonna hit a couple of these, try and hit some of these other items real quickly. Ribbon cuttings, community event attendance, we've kind of talked about that some.
Yeah, it's been touched on.
I don't know what carpooling has to do, yeah, it's good to encourage carpooling, and I assume that whoever drives the car gets the mileage, and that should be it. Is there any other?
Just, there's been some discussion about should we be having 6 vehicles, 7 vehicles go to AUMA?
Yeah.
Well.
Or should we rent a 12-passenger van and drive? Those kind of things where possible, right? So there's just been some of that discussion, it was on my board, so I throw it out there.
Well, I know with sometimes, like, other councillors have business or family or things like that, and they kind of feel like they need to take their own vehicles. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I've done in my case, especially when I'm doing like Calgary AMA, because my business and the town are both benefiting by my trip up there, I typically bill one way for the town, and then I bill half of
So you charge half the mileage.
That's
fair.
typically what I've done
Okay.
that way, but there should probably be some kind of a policy in place for it, so that it's consistent.
Okay, yeah.
I really agree with Councillor Barfuss. I really think our prime duty when we go to a UMA is obviously being at the UMA. That we have personal preferences is a different story, but I think we have to make that allowance. If we go visit family or do something else, which can happen, it happened to me once, I did the same thing as you did. I charged one way and not the other.
So that might be an answer to that question, yeah. Is it,
Yeah, I had the medical to attend to, and
the rule that
I did the same thing.
the rule is that we if you know, when we discuss it, if we say, you said take a bus or whatever, take a van and everybody. Thing is that if, you know, he drops off, then he drops off, then he drops off, then the bus gets smaller and smaller. But But I guess we could use that maybe as some kind of a principle, you get down to the town car if we have to, but as the principle is that we carpool and the
Where
town
possible.
covers the expense. And if you are specifically going for a personal, using part of that time as personal time, then we say we'll pay your mileage one way. That seems like a reasonable option on that. Okay, let's see, okay, attaching policy to employee association increase, we've already done that.
I think we've determined that after this year, we're gonna detach.
We didn't
is
want to do
correct?
that.
Yeah, we
Okay.
detach.
But then we have to have some kind of.
Yeah, we need to
a
establish.
mechanism for determining
Yeah, that's right.
compensation,
That's
which
right.
other communities look like they use a citizens committee
Yeah.
to do that. And then other items, okay,
Well,
time for some.
we did this last council, if you remember.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna read through these ones that Tyler has written. I'd like to kind of conclude this if we can, just because of what I've kind of felt like we budgeted for time. He's listed 6 things that are in many of the other community policies, and then he says other things to address. A clause explicitly saying that councillors are not reimbursed for attending anything with a partisan or political purpose. I think that makes sense. A clause section saying that councillors will not be reimbursed for attending anything that also reimburses them for attendance. Many of those
Double
policies.
dipping is not allowed.
Yeah, many of those policies said that if
Common sense.
the other organization reimbursement would actually be paid to the municipality, so that they kind of keep it consistent, and that would be one way to do that. Then he said, cell phone allowances, technology allowances. We do have our tablets that we get. I don't know if we want to go beyond that, but we can talk about that. And then who will review per diem, how often? Now, in a lot of the other policies, the mayor had to approve the expenses for councillors, and then the deputy mayor approved expenses for the mayor. If we want to put that in our policy, we could, we can discuss that, if we want to. And then, okay, will councillors receive honorarium for excused absences? Okay, if you're sick, are you still covered, but not covered if you go on vacation? Or do we excuse somebody to go on vacation? So those are some things that we can talk about. Yeah, not likely. We've kind of got that in our policy about, prorating if a councillor is missing some of his committee meetings, so, and that's fair. So, any concluding thoughts? We can address this at our planning session, Jeff, that we'd have time.
There are a few things, yeah.
Put a few things in there. Have we made some progress on this?
Yeah, so.
You feel like we're kind of got some takeaway? Okay, any other concluding thoughts from any of the council on any of these particular items, or any additional items that you'd like to just mention before we go to, leave this? Yeah.
I just want to know, do we still want them individually to kind of send some information to Jeff if we have further information regarding those items or not?
Yeah, I think so. You'd accept submissions?
Sure.
Okay.
Before
maybe-
our planning session on any items, so that you can.
Maybe we should say by the 15th of January, let's try to
Okay.
get
So
that.
if you're going to make any written submissions on any of these items?
By January 15th.
By January
we should
15th,
Try
get
to
it to Jeff.
get that.
And that would speed up our discussions
Yeah.
when we, discuss it. Anything we can do to, speed up the discussions, it helps, because, of course, we like to talk and visit, but we've got limited time for things, so. Oh, yeah, okay. So if that's good, let's move on then. I think we've done a pretty good job of discussing it. 6B, the distribution tariff fee schedule. You'll find a number of items that we charge for, de-energizing meters, re-energizing meters, information. And then at the end, there's proposals for increasing some of those fees. So if you had a chance to look that over, if you've got it on your drive. Any comments on that, Mary?
Jeff, what I understood from the new fees is to put them in line with what the other two towns are doing, more or less, that own their electrical system too. There are some fees that have gone up tremendously, that are double. And I'm trying to understand what the impact would be in doubling it up. Not that the intent would not be to bring us in line, but I'm more or less thinking of the customer. Go ahead.
If I might, one of the reasons I wanted this on the agenda is I'm actually a bit on the fence on some of these fees. And here's why. Let's say you fall into arrears on your electrical bill. And if we go with the fees of the other town or even what's proposed, you can get hit $60 to have a notice delivered that you're going to get shut off. You're hit $60 when you're shut off. And by the time you scramble to put the money together, you hit $60 to reconnect.
And you
And
already
as long as all that's in hours. If it's outside of the hours, that could be $120 to reconnect. And I get why the fees are in place. I understand that they're deterrents. I understand why they're set the way they are, but I haven't sat terribly comfortable with that because the other fees, meter upgrades and in situ tests and a number of those things, I frankly don't really care. They're not very common. They're normally requested by the retailer for us to go out and look and test a meter or do something. $35 or $60 for Minimax doesn't bother me one way or another. But I am concerned about the reconnect and the disconnect fees, frankly. I don't know.
They're typically for people who
Well,
are
on
having a
financial.
difficult time
Well,
making the
already
payment
have
already.
difficulties.
And we're burying them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, he's saying that almost amounts to maybe what they owe, on the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm wondering, if we were to turn at a fee schedule, if we were to look at them and see where we are today and what is proposed, maybe we could give administration a little bit of what would feel more comfortable for this council. It might not be in line with what the two others are doing, but maybe more representative of our clientele that has difficulty with those issues.
Yeah. So, just to be sure, just to say, I just want to ask a question and I'll go ahead. The itemized areas on here, I'm not going to the proposed, I'm just talking about the itemized area, that exists currently.
That's the current bylaw.
That's
yes.
the current bylaw,
Yeah.
it's already in existence.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right, and Kevin Phillips got a hold of me, actually, and I've told Councillor Creed this, he sent this to me last year when we were looking at all the other fees, but because the other two were fairly time sensitive, I left this out because I didn't want to gum up the works and delay the other ones. This doesn't have impact on your monthly bill unless you happen to be in arrears.
Right.
But if you're not in arrears, it doesn't impact your bill. And it actually leaving it low is to the benefit of anyone who's currently in arrears. So I wasn't panicked about changing this. And I've talked with Kevin about it, and while he did it as a point of parity with the other communities, he fully understands and would be fully fine understanding the political piece of this too.
Yeah.
And it's just those 3 or 4 different fees that I also believe we should recover our costs when we have to deliver these services. So if a retailer wants us to deliver a cutoff notice, I fully support that the town should recoup the cost for doing that on behalf of the retailer. But, and Jill maybe disagrees, I don't know, you've done this more than I have, but to deliver a cutoff notice takes whatever it takes to drive to and from a house in Cardston, which shouldn't be more than 5 to 7 minutes in any direction from the town office.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a little time, a little fuel, and a little wear and tear, but it's pretty minor.
Okay, so I know exactly where you're going with this, and I feel the same way. Why do we need to double up and charge more if the $35 is more than adequate? Why and who was suggesting that we go up to the $60 in the first place? And I think it behooves us, and it's definitely a political question here, because people are going to say, even if they're never going to get that notice, they say, why are you justifying $60 when it doesn't even cost you the $35? We're more than covering our costs, so my feelings are really strong. And just because people out there are doing that and charging that, that doesn't mean they're right. Okay? If they're sticking it to their people. We don't have to. So I'm very comfortable leaving it where it's at. And that's my feeling.
So when it comes to de-energizing and re-energizing, I don't know what our cost would be. I mean, they have a meter, they you send a workman out there and they, I don't know what that would cost us to do that.
It depends what.
It's not that long, is it?
It shouldn't be that
No, it's a
negative.
pretty quick process.
It's perfect. I've been on site many times.
Yeah.
In my business, I've had to go with the power guys here and give them access to the house, to the meter, so they can go in and charge it up. And it takes them 5 to 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, it's real quick.
Okay,
So
so,
it's not a big deal.
Except that, what does it represent in their dollars for 10 minutes work? Is that 1 hour's work?
I don't know.
And that's a
But the
problem.
point is cost recovery at least.
Yeah, but if it's 1 hour's work and an hour's work is $50,
yeah, or the hourly rate that the workers are paid, or what you're saying, yeah, and
but they work 5 minutes, but they probably
But-
must charge 1 hour.
Well, but it,
I don't know.
that's why there's two rates.
Description,
There's
yeah.
one, all of this is basically during hours. There is a much higher rate for after hours or urgent.
That's a totally different
Right, because
story.
we call somebody out, we pay them 2 hours, and that really escalates quickly.
Yes.
Right.
But if we can take care of it, which is what these regular charges would be, there is an after hours, which we don't currently have an after hours fee for a financial re-energize, but that's proposed at $120. That's because I'm calling somebody out
Right, right.
and paying them 2 hours at overtime.
Yeah.
So that stacks up pretty quick. And I do support cost recovery on this, but I'm not sure that parity is the right criteria here.
Okay,
Exactly.
And, can I just make a comment then on, I was just wondering if, could we just establish what our costs are and see if we can just do, make that our criteria, is that we'll do it at cost? Was that your comment?
Well, I was wondering about that, but the other question I had, for how many years did we have the present fee schedule?
Ooh, I want to say '06, but.
So it's still 7 years, so that there's a little bit of inflation due to salary increase, I can accept that.
Yeah.
But doubling up of the fee, I have difficulty with that. I really do.
Oh, this was 2011, sorry.
2011?
Yeah.
Councillor Barfuss?
So I don't know that I would want to have it hard at cost. We know that to deliver a notice doesn't cost even $35.
It has to be a deterrent.
So I don't know that saying it costs us $10 for the 10 minutes to send somebody out there and back. But
We could set
Flat
it,
rate
that at least.
yeah, but I don't see the need for us to
I wouldn't
be.
go any lower than what we have.
No,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah,
go lower than that.
that's what I'm getting at. So the only ones where we don't know where the cost amounts would be, would be those ones where you've got to call somebody out after hours, and
Yeah.
it is $120 appropriate for those ones, and arguably that might be the case.
Well, they have a set rate with their association too,
Yeah.
don't they,
Yeah.
for after hours?
It's 2 hours.
If you
It's
get
two-
called out, you get 2
2 hour
hours,
charge.
right?
That's
So
the point, 5
that's-
minutes is 2 hours.
so you have to go with that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. So
Yeah.
for those, that might be the appropriate rate for
Yeah.
something like that.
But
The
I
rest
don't
of them, to
suggest
be
it doesn't
honest,
happen very often after hours, does it?
We get a few that they finally get things sorted out, and I
I
need
wonder-
the power on at the end of the night, so we call somebody out, but
Yeah,
that's why there'd be a fee in place.
okay, well.
But so if I'm hearing this, council, we can look at more closely what the cost of each of those activities is, and make sure that the cost is being represented and covered in each of those at least.
Mhm.
And I agree with Councillor Barfuss, if the average is 7 minutes on reconnect, it doesn't mean the charge is $8.45
Right.
or something, right? We won't get that precise.
Yeah.
It's still $35.
Yeah.
But we'll
Yeah.
make sure that an after hours is being covered by the 120 or something like that.
okay, that's what I'd like to
I
see.
think no less than what the current rate is.
Okay?
Yeah, if we can stick kind of with what the current
Okay.
rates are and cover our costs, is that a good consensus
Yep.
for
Okay.
council?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I see.
Do you need a
people
recommendation?
nodding.
No, I'll bring it back to
If
council.
it comes to council for a motion, we'll come to council, so good, let's go to 6C, ACP grant application projects, this is for the.
That's
Six.
17?
Oh, 7, I'm sorry, what did I say? 7.
6.
7, yeah, 7,
You want to go to
7,
6C at this point?
7B, 7B.
7B.
You still have 6.
Wait, oh, I'm sorry,
Six.
I'm jumping ahead,
Yeah.
I got 60 in front of me, sorry.
Reserves policy is
Reserve
6A.
policy. So this should be fairly simple. Basically, when this was brought to us before, we talked about being able to move money from the reserve funds, and we gave the CAO latitude to move up to $20,000, $20,000 or less, and if it's more than that, then the council has to decide. And we asked, I think, that if the CAO moves, that he at least inform council. So 3C has been written to put that into the policy, so that if the CAO moves, money from the reserve policy, that he has a obligation to inform council at the next council meeting. So that's
it.
That's basically it. Okay.
So do you need a recommendation, Jeff, to approve this policy
Well, I'll
in
bring it
council?
to council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll bring it to council meeting. If, we have in the past done recommendations to council to approve it. So yes,
Right.
you could certainly do that if
So
you're
we
comfortable with it.
motion to recommend to the council?
So I would do a recommendation to council to accept the policy R40 reserves policy.
Okay.
Changes, additions.
So motion to recommend that council approve this policy as written. Okay, all in favor? All right, very good, thank you. Well, that gives us a chance to move to 6D, which is very similar, basically the policy on the budget and timeline process. I think this was Councillor Peavoy's request.
Yeah, it was.
That we don't forget the capitalization policy, and so that we make a reference to it. And so it's been put in as item number 8 under the guidelines. Town's intent to properly align funding with the respective expenditures, formerly the town and tax for the capitalization policy, which was used to fund in part utility capital projects, while utility revenues were used to fund the operating budget going forward. Capital utility projects should be budgeted and be funded from their respective utility revenues as much as possible, and et cetera. Anyway, I won't go on again. But so that was added. So are we all okay with that being put in there? We need a recommendation again.
I recommend that we recommend to council to approve policy B15-1, policy for budget process and timeline with the changes made.
Okay, as written. Okay, all in favor? All right, good. Let's move on to, now we're getting into 7. Okay, 7A, RMRF seminar, law seminar. Now, we're already attending the Brownlee seminar that the council is at. I looked at the things that are going to be discussed in this seminar. I didn't find anything that I particularly found a great deal of interest in. I think what we'll get at the Brownlee seminar, but maybe somebody did notice. Did anybody see anything that really stood out? Anybody interested in it?
The only thing I would ask, is somebody of administration going to go to that seminar?
I haven't determined that yet. I was going to wait and see kind of what council did, but.
That was kind of my thought, was that somebody should go.
Okay.
And then
Then
report
come
back.
and
So,
report back, whether it be administration or the mayor or one council or whatever.
who went to the?
I've been to the RMF once before because I missed the Brownlee
Oh, okay.
last year, and I went to it, and I found it very good. It was very informative.
But this year the topics are.
But maybe the topics aren't
Not as impressed.
not a big deal.
No.
I think
I think
that fits
those
into
are
their inability here to look at the geography of what is north and south too. But,
Yeah, there's some things are just covered in the north seminar.
I've
Yeah.
never heard
They don't
Edmonton
really
referred
apply
to as
to us too
Central
much.
Alberta
We
before.
don't need to have anybody there, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I looked at the topic and as councillor.
What is our deadline for applying on for
Coming up.
RSPs or RSVPs to that?
They don't
The
say.
first meeting is, our meeting would be Airdrie, right?
Here,
Yeah.
March 11th, so normally it's about a month
Sure, we'd have
before
a month
time.
anyway, yeah.
we should all just go to Grand Prairie, why not?
Go to the northern end, yeah. Make sure we charge the mileage.
The only item on this whole thing that I see is applicable, and that'd be in our CAO's area, is over your employment issues and ever-changing laws.
Yeah.
But as discussed, Bromley
doesn't.
covers that.
Usually, anyway.
Well, they have a question and answer and.
Right.
and right
Yeah, the
to
bullshit.
Yeah, the
Bear pit, bear pit.
bullshit. Yeah.
The bear pit section.
And I think Bromley is more.
I got the Genesis.
It's more to the point, and
Well,
you get a lot.
And then if we have individual issues as a council, we can,
Ask questions.
We can ask questions, so.
I agree.
So anyway, so if you feel like the Brownlee will cover us for this year for law, I won't,
I think it will.
we won't spend any more time on this. If somebody suddenly feels like they want to go to a flapjack spell, all right, we'll move to 7B.
Will they get it per diem?
Yeah, per diem.
It would have to be approved.
Yeah, by then we'll have our policy in place.
Political interest.
Okay, 7B is the county ACP grant support. And this is for radios. Maybe Jeff, if you'd like to
Sure.
speak to this.
So this actually, some of you may recall, and I wasn't involved with this, but Marion was, this came up a few years ago. If you were on emergency services, some of you counselors may recall. This application is twofold, well, actually almost three, but the town's part would be quite small in this. One, it would be to get a new tower and repeater for McGrath, because they're using Raymond's right now, so to get them their own. It would get each community some of these AFRAX radios, which are the provincial emergency standard. So the town, we would put, say, one in the office here and one in the public workshop, which would allow us, in the case of an emergency, to have every participating emergency services group on the same frequency. The other thing that can happen is, depending on the grant, we could put in to replace all of our radios and get them on a same tower and dual signal with the county, so that we communicate. The only thing is, if it's going to be a lot out of pocket for us, we have radios that work internally for us fine. I don't see us needing to spend a bunch of money, but if they want to throw it in with the rest of the grant,
See, they're about $4,000 per unit.
well, they're expensive, yeah, and so I'm not
And
interested
then
in,
It's a lot of money.
yeah, I'm not interested in shelling out from the town's pocket to upgrade our radios, but if it can be part of the ACP, there could be some benefit in sharing a frequency with the county. I could see that, especially for emergency things or joint construction projects, but not for $100,000.
Yeah.
There's not that much benefit. And
Okay.
then it would also enable the emergency services to install the GPS tracking in emergency services vehicles running off the county's software and server. So that's what that's all encompassing. I think it's a good grant, and I think the council should support it.
So Murray's asked a few questions, like how many...
Yeah, so I'll get back to him on all those things. He was putting the grant together. In fact, he sent me the grant today.
Okay, now is that going to vary, like is this a matching grant or?
ACPs
No,
aren't.
it's a straight
ACPs.
through grant, so,
Straight through
okay, yeah. Right.
So, Jeff, to go ahead with what you're thinking is that we're not there to shell out $100,000. How do we make the recommendation so that this council knows that we will not be on the hook for any other money?
What I could do is, if in principle you support this, I'll bring, next Tuesday, I'll bring the application, because Murray just sent it to me like a few hours ago. I'll bring the application and we can talk about the extent of the town's involvement in the
Okay.
application and the financial
All
implication of
right.
that.
Okay. I
Right, and
think
so you
that
can
would
see
work.
that worst case, here's what we'd be on the hook for.
Right.
And that you might be a little more comfortable with that. But I just wanted to bring it up here in case there was any philosophical issues or things I needed to work through with Murray this week before, because
Yeah.
he wants to submit it next week.
Okay,
So-
so other than that, it's just a letter of support?
Yeah, we would just
Yeah.
send a
Okay,
letter
so
as part
that's
of the
what I
grant.
was wondering.
Yes.
Okay, do we need to just make
You
a
wanna
recommendation
recommend
to
the council to do that? Yeah.
for that? Okay, Rob? or-
Move that we make a recommendation to council to support the ACP grant application with the county.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, we'll support that grant, and you'll bring in more information on it at the council meeting.
Yeah.
Great, okay, 7C, and this, we're at
7D.
7.
Oh, you
No.
wanted to talk about correspondence, 9C.
Well, that's tied in with We just finished
So
7B.
you got it all?
We
Okay,
just finished 7B, that was the county.
So there's another one,
County
shared
grant
services.
application. And this is, yeah, and the 9C, the first letter from the Municipal Affairs was announcing the
Yeah.
application for this grant, and that's why I just would like to address that letter with that, because that's where he announces that, that we can apply for grants.
Yeah.
And then what grants do we want to apply for under what? And Jeff has suggested some things that we had the shared services and the shared economic development. And maybe I'll just let Jeff speak to that if you
Sure.
would for a minute.
So the turnaround on this ACP grant is really tight. I want to say it's February 4th without going back to the letter, but it's a month. And so I was thinking about, is there some things that we want to apply? We've just agreed to support the county's application as a participating partner. Do we have some regional priorities we want to look at? The two that immediately came to mind were two that we proposed before, and we're looking to hire an economic development person this year. Do we go to the county and say, look, do you want to get on side and support our application for a joint economic development person for the region again? Well, we never submitted the application, but we proposed that joint, that was the funding that was proposed in Harold Johns Rood's
Right.
proposal. So that's one option, and the other one I had, which was a bit of a continuation of Harold Johns Rood's, and we'd have to carefully maneuver this, let me be clear. But there was some concern from the county when we met with them over the formula to come to the shared services amount. They didn't like the formula. Would it be reasonable then to say, do we want to bring Harold back and have him either A, bring us and continue with this study, but bring us other municipalities that are using this formula and get a report from them on how it's working, B, propose alternative formulas, or I had a C at one time and I lost it, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We could see if we could do a continuation of that and maybe find a more equitable, well, I don't want to say equitable because I believe the formula is equitable, find a more palatable formula for the county. That's the other thing I thought we could look at. I don't think it'd be a big grant application because
some of the whole legwork's been done.
most of the legwork's been done.
Yeah.
It would just be tweaking some of those things.
But we would need to get the approval of the county to
We would.
partner with us on that grant,
Yeah.
so, okay.
I have a little bit of a question regarding that partnership, because if we bring back Harold, and if we don't have the county right at the table when we discuss the parameters for the new study, or the review of the studies that is done, we do it one more time. There need to be an active participant. If they are not, it's no sense for us trying.
If I recall, the last time we applied on this ACP grant, we were turned down flatly.
Yeah,
We didn't get nothing.
We've been turned down the last couple of times. This is going to be a highly oversubscribed grant, again,
But
for
it
sure.
was trying.
So Jeff, what do you see as a timeline for and the process for doing this?
Well, they haven't announced when they're going to award, but the turnaround was certainly quick. My guess is that they want to get the money out before the provincial fiscal.
Yeah,
Right.
I think so.
That's my guess.
So do we need to arrange a meeting with the county, or do you,
Well, we can-
Murray, or do we need to get our intermunicipal committee together and?
Well, we could do it a couple of ways, much like Murray's done with me. He sent me a letter saying, hey, do you want to go to your council and see if they're on side with this? Here's some background. I can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other way.
Yeah. I think-
But we're actually going to talk about the development plan
Yeah.
committee here shortly, and potentially if we schedule that in the next 10 days,
Right.
we could.
That's what I was going to ask,
discussion.
is this
Yeah.
going to lead into the
It
next?
definitely
next
could,
item?
yeah. But I just wanted to feel perhaps you guys have an idea of some other regional initiatives we should look at. But these ones are sitting on the table, ready to be executed.
That we could do, we've already thought about them, and we already have half of the legwork
Yeah.
done on them, so, yeah, those would be good ones. And this is a grant that's got to be a collaboration grant, so, whatever it is, it's got to be a partnership with another municipality, so, yeah, if anybody's thought of any other, or thinks of any other things, you'd have to get it up quick, but,
Yeah, we need to discuss it next week.
Okay.
By next council meeting, that'll still give us 2.5 weeks to put it
Okay.
in. It should only take us a few days
So-
to turn around the application.
yeah, so council, if you want to give it a little thought between now and next Tuesday, but these are good ones that we can certainly move ahead with. So let's, plan on that.
Need a short break.
Okay, well,
I do need a short break.
that needs a short break, so make the motion.
I move that we break for 3 minutes.
No, have a 5 minutes, just 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes.
Okay, motion to have a 5-minute break, all in favor? Okay, go for it.